Is it obligatory to wear tefillin all day?
We find in the Shulchan Aruch, Rabbi number 37, Siman Lamed Zayin, Seif Beth. Miswathan, that is to say the miswa, the commandment to wear tefillin. Miswathan liyothan alo kol hayom. The essential definition of the miswa is to wear them all day, throughout the day. The Shulchan Aruch continues, however, and says, Aval mipnei shesarichim guf naki. However, seeing that there is the halachic requirement that a person who wears tefillin must have literally a clean body, that is to say, that he is in full control of his bodily functions. And he goes on to explain, Shelo yafiach bahem, that he should not break wind whilst wearing tefillin. That is asur. Secondly, Shelo yasiach da'atho mehem, and that he should not forget. He should not be absent-minded and unaware of the tefillin that he is wearing. He has to constantly be aware of the fact that he is wearing tefillin, and seeing that not all people are perhaps capable of doing this, although this is in itself an interesting and important discussion. But for now we are reading the Shulchan Aruch. So we have these two considerations. Guf naki, a clean body, and that a person should be aware at all times when wearing tefillin. And not all people are capable of these two things. Naharu, it is therefore customary, shelo lahniham kol hayom. The custom is not to wear tefillin all day. Umikol makom, nevertheless, sarich kol adam lizaher bahem. All Jews are required to be particular about performing this miswa, liyotham alaw b'sha'at kriyat shema u'tefillah, to wear them at least during the time when he reads kriyat shema in the morning, and when reciting the tefillah, the Shmoneh Esrei, the 18 berachot, the Amidah, the standing prayer. So the Shulchan Aruch states, in principle, the miswa is to wear the tefillin all day. However, for these two reasons mentioned, A, the requirement that a person have a guf naki, a clean body, and that he is able to control his bodily functions, and shelo yasiach da'atho mehem, that he should be aware at all times that he is wearing tefillin, and not all people are capable, perhaps, of achieving this. The custom is not to wear them all day, and nevertheless all Jews are required to wear tefillin at least once a day when reciting Kriyat Shema and when praying. That is the halacha as stated in the Shulchan Aruch. It should be noted that the language, the words chosen by the Shulchan Aruch for this particular seif, for this statement, are copied precisely from the Torah written by Rabbeinu Yaakov ben Harosh, the son of the Rosh. And it is interesting further to note that both the Torah and the Shulchan Aruch are in fact the beginning of their statement is based on the words of the Rambam. Let us therefore read the statement of the Rambam on this matter. Rambam writes at the end of the fourth perek of Hilchot Tefillin, Halacha Kaf He, Rambam writes, Kedushat Tefillin, Kedusha Gedolahi. The Kedusha, the level of becoming closer and more aware of Hashem, and being set apart from the general mass of humanity who live without such awareness of Hashem. The Kedusha of Tefillin is very great. Kedusha Gedolahi. Shekol Zeman Shetefillim al Rosho Shel Adam Wa al Zra'o. As long as a person is wearing tefillin on his arm and on his head, Hu Ano, he is humble, Uyareh, and God-fearing. Ve'eno nimshach bishok uv'siha b'tolah, and he will not, the person who understands anything at all about the tefillin that he is wearing, and is aware of these tefillin that he is wearing, which he must be aware, as we said, he will not therefore engage in frivolous talk or activities. Nor will he think inappropriate thoughts or evil thoughts. Ella, rather, the fact that he is wearing tefillin, this fact will direct him and cause him, he will direct his mind and his thoughts to the truth and to that which is just and proper and correct. Lefichach, therefore, says Rambam, tzarich adam lehishtadel, a person must endeavor, tzarich adam lehishtadel liyothon alo kol hayom, therefore a person must endeavor to be wearing them all day. Shemiswathan kachi, because this is the miswa, this is the definition of the miswa, says Rambam. Then he goes on to state that which is even beyond the call of duty. In other words, not just wearing all day, but not being even a moment without tefillin. So he quotes the famous statement, Amaru alo al Rav, it was stated by the Chachamim with regards to Rav, Talmid Rabbeinu HaKadosh, the student of Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, Rabbeinu HaKadosh, the redactor of the Mishnah. Shekol yamo lo ra'uhu shehalach arba' amoth belo Torah, or belo tzitzith, or belo tefillin. He was not seen ever, even for a moment, to be without Torah, without speaking words of Torah, or without tzitzith, without wearing tzitzith, or without tefillin. So we see that these words, liyothan alo kol hayom, which are quoted by the Torah and the Shulchan Aruch, the source of these words, of this expression, is in the Rambam. However, the Torah and the Shulchan Aruch differ with regards to what extent one should take into account the reality of what people are doing around in one's neighborhood, in one's locality, what people around you are actually doing. Seeing that at the time when the Torah and the Shulchan Aruch wrote these words, it was and had been for centuries, it had been the case that most Jews were not wearing tefillin all day. They therefore said, you should know, even though this is how it should be, there is the ideal, the way things should be, and there is also the way things are. The way things are is that most Jews do not wear tefillin all day, but all Jews wear tefillin during Kriyat Shema and Tefillah. The Rambam, on this matter, as with many other issues, adopts a different approach. Rambam is much less concerned and takes into account much less what most Jews are doing. Rather, he tells you what most Jews should be doing. And so he does not even mention the fact that this is not the common practice. He simply tells you this is how things should be, and therefore you understand when you read the Rambam that this is what you should do. So again, Rambam says, because of the great powerful effect of the miswa of tefillim on a person who wears these tefillim, therefore lefichach tzarich adam lehishtadel liyothan alo kol hayom, therefore a person must endeavor to wear them all day. And he adds, you shouldn't think that this is a miswa min hamuvhar, this is some kind of midat hasiduth, an extra particularly pious practice beyond the call of duty, beyond the actual halachic requirement. Rambam says no. Shemiswathan kachi, because this is the miswa, this is the definition of the miswa, this is how it should be. This was the intention of the Torah with regards to this miswa. With regards to this question of the definition of the mitzvah, Rabbeinu Hafetz Hayim in the Mishnah Berurah, or more precisely in the Biur Halacha, at the beginning of this siman, writes as follows. He quotes first of all from the Peri Megadim, who investigates and discusses this matter, who asks the question, is it a mitzvah min ha-Torah to wear tefillin all day? Or rather, perhaps min ha-Torah dai berega ehad, or perhaps min ha-Torah it is necessary to wear the tefillin at least for a few moments every day, shall we say, when reading Kriyat Shema. In other words, wearing tefillin once during the entire day is the one fulfills the mitzvah of the Torah. Or midrabanan, but based on the statements and the injunctions of the Hachamim, of the sages, kol hayom, it's a mitzvah all day. So, but min ha-Torah, really, the mitzvah is just once a day. Wearing all day is already an extension of the mitzvah by the Hachamim. Is that perhaps the case? And nowadays, again, this was written by the Pri Megadim just a few centuries ago, and because of the problems mentioned by the Shulchan Aruch, therefore today we have reverted to the definition of the Torah, the mitzvah of the Torah, which is to wear the tefillin at some point during the day. The Pri Megadim's conclusion is, and he writes as follows, the Hafetz Chaim, "De'ikaran shel dvarim de'im lo heniach yom echad kalal litfilin bitel mitzvah taseh." The bottom line, he says, is as follows: if a person goes one day without wearing tefillin altogether, that day he has been mevatel the mitzvah taseh, because it is necessary to wear the tefillin at least at some point during the day. And having worn them even for a moment, on that day one has performed the mitzvah min ha-Torah. Aval mitzvah min ha-muvhar min ha-Torah, but from the Torah there is also the mitzvah. It is part of the mitzvah, although it is not the most essential obligatory definition of the mitzvah, but rather it is the intention of the Torah and not of the Chachamim, that one should wear tefillin all day. Liyothan alo kol hayom. That is a mitzvah min ha-muvhar. That is already the fullest and most correct way to perform this mitzvah. So that is the opinion of the Pri Megadim. The Hafetz Chaim goes on to quote another posek, the Yeshuot Yaakov, who wrote, "Pasak de min ha-Torah mitzvathan kol hayom," that the mitzvah min ha-Torah is to wear tefillin all day. And therefore he goes on to encourage people. He quotes from the Eliyahu Rabbah, and the Mishnah Berurah himself writes that it is correct and proper for a person who is capable, who is able to do so, to wear tefillin all day. Curiously, the Hafez Haim does not mention the words of the Rambam that we just quoted. And let us reread those words that the Rambam wrote. Lefichach tzorich adam lehishtadel, and therefore, because of this great importance and the impact that this mitzvah of tefillin, when performed properly, has on the person, and this was the intention of the Torah all along. For this reason, lefichach tzorich adam lehishtadel, a person must endeavor, must do his utmost, liyothan alo kol hayom, to wear them all day. Shemiswathan kachi, these words, these last words, shemiswathan kachi, are a clear indication and proof that Rambam does not believe, does not agree with the Pri Megadim that it is a mitzvah min ha-muvhar min ha-Torah to wear tefillin all day, but rather that is shurat hadin, that is the mitzvah, that is the essential definition of the mitzvah. It is not going the extra mile. It is what the Torah expects and what the Torah directs us to do. There is no hint at all in this formulation of the Rambam that it is anyway a midat hasiduth or a miswa min mufhar. When Rambam wishes to make such a statement with regards to a miswa, he makes himself very clear in innumerable places in his writings. Here, Rambam does not say this. Rambam goes out of his way, in fact, to say the opposite. Rambam says, miswathan kachi, this is the miswa, and therefore this is what you should do. And therefore, were one to ask Rambam, why in fact, therefore, do we see that most Jews are not doing this? Rambam would tell you, do not concern yourself with what most Jews are doing. You should concern yourself with yourself. You should, first of all, do that which is correct, that which you know and understand to be correct. And if you have questions, we can discuss that later, but this is the bottom line. This is the miswa of the Torah, and this is what you should do. Again, we see that Rambam does not go to any great lengths to justify that which is done by most Jews or many people in various times, in various generations, in various localities, if he feels that this is not, in fact, how things should be. Rambam always prefers and always stresses that which should be, the way things must be, rather than discuss what some people do, what other people say, what the custom is. Rambam is less involved and less concerned with customs, and much more and focuses much more on that which the Torah instructs us and directs us to do. Then Rambam does go on to tell us about a higher level of this the performance of this mitzvah, which is already beyond the call of duty, which is not literally to walk even 4 amoth, arba amoth, which is about 2 meters, without tefillin. This he quotes in the name of Rav, as we said before, that there was the custom of Rav never to be without tefillin even for a moment. That is already a miswa min mufhar. But the essential miswa is what he described before. From Rambam's words, it is very clear that he does not accept that which the Pri Mechudim wrote, and it is also, therefore, it seems that which certain other Ahronim wrote, like Yeshuot Yaakov, their words reflect more closely the view of the Rambam. And in fact, one cannot find any indications anywhere in Chazal that there is any reason to imagine that wearing tefillin all day is anything but the essential definition and requirement of the miswah. There is, however, one more point that needs to be clarified. Rambam wrote, "Lefichach tzarich adam lehishtadel." A person must endeavor, must do his utmost, liyothan alo kol hayom, to wear tefillin all day. One could ask, if in fact Rambam is of the opinion that one is required to wear tefillin all day, why did Rambam simply not write, "Lefichach hayav adam liyothan alo kol hayom"? A person must wear tefillin all day. Why write tzarich lehishtadel? One must endeavor. One must make a great effort. But he doesn't write the word hayav. One is required. One is obligated to do so. Why not? When one investigates the Rambam's usage of this terminology, lehishtadel, to endeavor, to do one's utmost, one discovers that Rambam uses this terminology very rarely in a handful of places, and yet we can most definitely discern a reason why he writes this term, uses this term in certain contexts. Rambam writes in Hilchot Berachot Perek Ahadasa, chapter 11, Halacha Beth, Yesh miswat aseh, there are certain miswat aseh, Sha'adam hayav lehishtadel. Here Rambam writes hayav lehishtadel. One is required to do one's utmost, to endeavor, wilirdof, and to seek out and chase after the miswah, ad sheya'aseh otha, until he actually performs the miswah that he is required to do. In other words, there are miswot where a person is commanded to do a certain thing, and it is his business to do everything in his power and not to rest until he has performed that mitzvah. For example, Rambam writes, Kiron, for example, Tefillin. One example is Tefillin. One must do everything in one's power to obtain Tefillin and to wear them, of course, because just obtaining them and having them in one's cupboard or in one's bag is not the performance of the mitzvah. Similarly, he writes, in addition to Tefillin, Sukkah, Wululav, Shofar. These mitzvot are referred to as a chova, as an obligation, because there is no way really, unless one is anus, unless the circumstances are such that one is truly incapable and prevented from performing the mitzvah, there is no way to become exempt. So if you do not have tefillin at all, well then you must get yourself tefillin. It is your business, it is your obligation to acquire tefillin and to wear them. If you do not have a sukkah, and Sukkot is coming up, it is your business, and there is no way to exempt yourself from this mitzvah. You must build for yourself a sukkah where you'll be able to eat and to sleep. Because a person is required, no matter what, he's required to perform this mitzvah. So you see, the Rambam is using the term lehishtadel here with regards to something which is an absolute chova. He says, hayav lehishtadel, a person is obligated to do his utmost. And he goes on to say, wa'elu hen hanikraim chova, and these mitzvot that I have mentioned as examples, tefillim, sukkah, lulav, shofar, these are all a chova, an obligation. As opposed to what, Rambam says? As opposed to mitzvot such as mezuzah. Why is mezuzah not on the same level? Because Rambam goes on to explain, if one chooses to live in a tent all one's life, or to live on a houseboat, then if one lives on a boat, one is not required to have a mezuzah. That is the halakha. And it is mutar to live on a houseboat. It is mutar to live in a tent. And if that's your way of life, or that's what you prefer to do, then you do not have to have a mezuzah. So it is an obligation if you own a house and you live in that house. But if you do not own a house, you do not live in a house that is obligated to have a mezuzah, then you don't need to have one. So the word lehishtadel does not mean you should try, but if it didn't work out, it's unfortunate, but that's not the end of the world. No, that's not what the word lehishtadel means. Lehishtadel means you must do your utmost because you are obligated to do something. You are required to do your utmost to achieve that mitzvah, to perform that mitzvah, even though it involves perhaps even a great deal of effort. For example, to get the various building materials together to build a sukkah may not always be an easy thing to do. To obtain a shofar, so that you can hear the sound of the shofar on Rosh Hashanah, may not always be a simple thing. There may be many places and times in history where it was very difficult to obtain a shofar, or to have tefillin. Tefillin do not fall out of the sky. One has to find someone who knows how to produce them for you, or you have to learn yourself how to make them. And Rambam does in fact explain in detail how one produces tefillin. So you are required to do this, you are obligated to do this mitzvah, and you are required to make the maximal effort, everything in your power, to live up to that standard. And we see this point very clearly in Hilchot Korban Pesach, to do with the Passover sacrifice. At the beginning of the section of Hilchot Korban Pesach, as always, Rambam mentions all the misvot aseh, the positive commandments, and the misvot lo ta'aseh, the negative commandments, with regards to this misvah, this korban. And he writes, misvah yod daled, shelo yashir mimeno laboker. It is forbidden to leave any of the meat of the Korban Pesach till the morning. In other words, all the meat everything that is edible of the korban, of the sacrifice, which is after all a sacrifice which is eaten by those who are part of that group of people who brought that particular sacrifice, the korban pesach. It is eaten by those people. It is a miswah. It is the commandment to eat it at Leil HaSeder, as part of the Seder, at the beginning of Chag HaMatzot, the beginning of Pesach. It is asur to leave any of that meat till the morning. It must all be consumed. So this is a miswah lo ta'aseh, shelo yashir mimenu laboker. There's no ifs and buts about it. Rambam writes in the 10th chapter, Perek Asiri of Hilchot Korban Pesach, Halacha Yod Aleph, he writes, V'sarich adam lehishtadel, precisely the same words that Rambam wrote with regards to wearing tefillin all day. V'sarich adam lehishtadel shelo yashir mi besar ha-pesach ad boker. A person must endeavor and must do his utmost that none of the meat of the Korban Pesach is left till the morning. Shene'emar, as it states, V'lo thothiru mimenu ad boker. None of it shall be left till the morning. Ve'im hishir mimenu, and if a person did leave some of the meat, now it's not actually one person, we're talking about many people, usually tens of people who are minuyim, that is to say they are literally subscribers, they are part of the group that brought that particular sacrifice, and then they all celebrate Pesach Leil HaSeder together, where they recite the Haggadah and eat matzah with Korban Pesach, with the maror. All those people who perform these miswoth together, they're called the Havurah. That Havurah, that group of people, are all responsible to ensure that none of the meat of the Korban Pesach is left till the morning. And if one did not so do, im hishid mimenu, and some of it was left, ben barishon ben basheni, whether the first or the second Pesach, because those who are unable to do the Pesach in the month of Nisan have a second chance, an obligation to do it in the month of Iyar, the second month of the year. Avar belo ta'aseh, one is guilty of having transgressed a miswat lo ta'aseh, one has transgressed a negative commandment. So it is an absolute obligation not to leave any of the meat of the Korban Pesach till the morning, and yet Rambam does not write V'hayav adam shelo yashir mi besar Pesach ad boker, and a person is required, he is obligated to ensure that none of the meat of the Korban Pesach is left till the morning, that it is all consumed. Why did he not write this? Why does he choose to use the term V'sarich adam lehishtadel? A person must endeavor, must do his utmost. Exactly the same words as he wrote with regards to tefillin. The answer is that even when something is an obligation, there are certain miswoth where it is more likely, there are more reasons than perhaps with regards to other miswoth, why a person may not be able to perform this miswah either at all or to perform it in the ideal fashion. For example, with regards to the Korban Pesach, let's say 50 people were the menuyim, were the Havurah, the group who joined together to bring this particular Korban Pesach. So you have the sacrifice, you have now X amount of meat that is to be consumed during the Seder meal, and obviously one person cannot consume all that meat by himself, so we have many people. So let's say we have 50 people. Now what happens if, and everything was planned correctly and it would have been fine if all those 50 people were present and able to eat from the Korban, but let's say of those 50, 25, an extended family, shall we say, they all attended a wedding the day before, and there was a case of food poisoning. There was some problem with the food, with the catering, and all these people are down now with serious food poisoning or gastrointestinal problems, and they're unable to eat. They're unable to partake of the Korban Pesach. You cannot find another 25 people now out of nowhere, and you cannot just invite people who are not menuyim, who are not part of the group, who didn't subscribe to this Korban Pesach. You have to be part of the Havurah. So now the people who are left, the 25 who are left, would have to eat perhaps twice as much, and maybe that's not possible. Not everyone will be able to consume that much, and also it's asur, it is forbidden to eat from the Korban Pesach achila gasa. That is to say, to eat when one really cannot bear to eat anymore. That is called achila gasa. That is improper and it's asur. So it may be, for reasons that are entirely beyond your control, that some of the meat of the Korban Pesach will in fact remain till the morning. And there is a miswat aseh in the Torah which deals with this, that if that happened, then you are required to burn that which remains. We see therefore very clearly that the term tzarich lehishtadel, one must endeavor, one must do one's utmost to perform this miswah, to live up to the miswah and the requirements of this miswah. This terminology is used in that kind of a situation with regards to that kind of a miswah where there may be objective reasons which are beyond your control, which will prevent you from performing the miswah, either preventing it keeping the miswah, performing the miswah at all, or doing so fully in the correct manner. And the same is true of tefillin. As we said before, there can be various reasons. Some of them may have to do with physiological reasons, whether a person is fully in control of their bodily functions. There may be other reasons, such as heseh hada'ath, although this is something that needs to be explained on another occasion more fully, more correctly. But the Shulchan Aruch, the Torah, did mention that because of these kinds of reasons, it became customary not to wear tefillin all the time. It is a fact that there are certain considerations, there are certain situations in which a person cannot wear tefillin all the time. Therefore, seeing that the performance of this miswah in its proper fashion all day is not necessarily always entirely in one's hands, therefore Rambam uses the terminology tzarich lehishtadel. You must endeavor to do so. Now, if a person were to ask, well, why doesn't Rambam use the same terminology with regards to all miswot? Because really you could say the same with regards to anything, with regards to sukkah, with regards to shofar, with regards to lulav. All these are also miswot which you may not be able to perform the miswah, you may not be able to build a sukkah for various reasons, or you may not be able to obtain arbat haminim, a lulav, an ethrog, etc. The answer is that with all miswot you have the concept of ones. Ones means where a situation in which a person is prevented from performing the miswah by external circumstances. A classic example would be if you were thrown in jail by non-Jewish authorities, and they couldn't care less whether you performed the miswah of lulav this Sukkot or not, and therefore you will be unable to obtain a lulav. You will not be able to perform the miswah. You are not guilty of not performing the miswah because you were anus. Anus means you were prevented objectively and completely from doing so. The same is true of all miswah essentially. There's onus with regards to any miswah. If a person was required to eat masa on Pesach, as all Jews are required to do, but if a person is a celiac and therefore his medical condition does not allow him to eat even a kazait, even a small amount of masa made from wheat or barley at Lela Seder, then he is anus. He did not perform the miswah, but he is not guilty of transgression because he is anus. He was prevented from doing so by this medical reality, this medical condition. With regards to a miswah like tefillin or the Korban Pesach, as we saw before, a person can do everything in his power to perform the miswah, and can have the intention and the desire to, shall we say, wear tefillin all day, but there may be certain situations and reasons and realities in which a person is unable to do so. Even, for example, being ashamed wearing tefillin in front of other people who are not wearing tefillin and therefore feeling uncomfortable. Is that a kind of ones? It is a kind of ones. We have the halakha that a person who is mista'ir, the wearing of tefillin causes him great discomfort, is patur, he's exempt. If you feel so terribly uncomfortable wearing tefillin in the presence of others who are not doing so, that is a kind of tsar, that is a kind of mista'ir, and therefore you are exempt from wearing tefillin. This is why it is reported in the Ma'aseh Rav, the book called Ma'aseh Rav, in the name of the Gra, the Gaon of Vilna, that if a person wishes to wear tefillin all day, but knows that if he does so, people will see the tefillin on his head, and people will ridicule him or make him feel very uncomfortable, and he's unwilling to continue wearing tefillin in that situation. Therefore, the Gra says, in that case, wear only the tefillah shariyat, wear only the tefillin on the hand, on the arm, and that can be covered by your sleeve, by your jacket, what have you, and no one has to know, if that's your concern. In other words, such a concern is not completely illegitimate, and you are doing the most that you can in that situation. It might also be the case that another person with a different frame of mind, with a different psychological makeup, will say, I don't really care what other people think, and if this is the right thing to do, this is what I will do. But not all people are able to function in that way. So because this mitzvah of tefillin, like the mitzvah of Korban Pesach, and like perhaps certain other examples, but not many, the fullest performance of that mitzvah is not only up to you, it's up to you to want to do so and to do your utmost, yes, but it's possible there will be certain facts and realities that will prevent you from doing so. There may be medical, physiological, there may be societal, psychological, what have you, all kinds of reasons. Therefore, you must do your utmost, and therefore it may not always be possible for you to do that which you wish to do. And therefore, and therefore a person must make the maximal effort, and sometimes he may not succeed, but that is already in the hands of Hashem. That is no longer in the hands of the individual. This is the correct understanding of the concept of wearing tefillin all day, and why the Rambam uses that terminology in very, very, very few places with regards to such mitzvot.
Thank you, Rabbi Bar-Hayim. We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. We would also like to suggest the following opportunity to our viewers. If you identify with Rabbi Bar-Hayim's message and would like to sponsor or dedicate a video interview with the rabbi in honor or memory of a loved one, if you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.